Hey everyone, it's me, HawkeyeG, and I'm here with another campaign starter guide. This time I'm doing another Empire faction, the Golden Boy and the Golden Order. Gelt has had an updated start position for a while now, but it is a nice change of pace for the Empire campaign. There's a few things that change, but in the long run you're ultimately still looking to consolidate the Empire, fight the vampires, and then repel chaos. Normally in these videos, we go through a series of things. I want to do this one slightly differently, where I go through kind of a big picture overview of the campaign and just give some brief, touching points on different phases of the campaign. Then we'll kind of go back and look at the details, talking about any unique buildings or military compositions that might come into play, discuss some short-term goals and focus points, and then some of the long-term strategy elements of the campaign as well. Now, if you are enjoying these videos, as always, I'm going to ask to please leave a like and hit subscribe. It really does help the channel out, helps me to know what kind of videos people like, and just really helps and makes me feel good too, of course. With that being said, let's get into the guide and take a look. Alright, so like I said, I want to start by kind of doing a big picture overview of the guide instead of starting with some of the details like I used to. I kind of want to just quickly go through so you can get like an overview of, how does the campaign shape up, what does it play out like, what does it look like. So of course, the start is going to be pretty consistent, the same no matter how you do it. You're going to start at war with the greenskins. Of course, you want to clean this up. And the next, they're going to have, you can't see it here, but they've got the settlement. So you've kind of got your province, the southern province. And the next thing is probably going to be Wissenland. Their fealty is so low, it's extremely likely that they'll fight you. So these are kind of the little skirmishes you have in the early game. Once you feel you've kind of dealt with your initial starting situation, the next major thing I would suggest is just finding little things to do while you build up. The little Skaven settlement here, maybe some of the dwarves, or even pushing south into the border princes or some other nearby territory. Your biggest concern at this point is watching the vampires and how they grow, especially compared to Reikland. It's actually very likely that Reikland will do well enough early on to contest the vampires, and you basically just want to make sure that the vampires aren't going to come for you instead, and that you would be ready for it if they do. It shouldn't take too long, but once the Empire and the vampires go to war, you'll kind of have a better idea of what their standing is, and you kind of just want to follow up on whatever needs to happen, whether that's you making a move against the vampires yourselves, or just kind of continuing to build up and watch. It's also important to make sure that you are building up to, or close to being able to confederate some of these factions, because once you can start confederating people as the Empire and sweep together some of these, especially at this point in the campaign, right? I consider this to be one of the most critical parts of the campaign. Taking control of Reikland and using their momentum to wipe out the vampires is really the most important thing you have in the early parts of this campaign. Once you've got those confederations, you should really be in a great position, and honestly, it's just playing politics for a little bit of time. You want to continue trying to build up fealty on as many different Empire factions as you can. You kind of want to make sure to secure your borders and play a little bit defensively here. It's also very likely that Clan Moulder will start to be an issue at this point. Typically they do well in controlling the northeast here, so you just want to play defensively and let chaos show up and basically be in a position to repel chaos or bounce attacks from Clan Moulder and let chaos take out Drycha and Clan Moulder for you so that you can do the work on them. Once chaos does show up, you can pretty much be ready to backstab Drycha and respond to Moulder as well. I mean, you can see even here, like I mentioned, they can be a problem. They took some territory, but it's not that important to me, right? You just kind of have to establish your frontiers and your borders, and they're gonna have to respond to chaos, and so that's going to give you kind of the opportunity to clean up whatever you need to and form a much more solidified border, either to repel this current wave of the chaos invasion or basically to prepare yourself for the next one as well. Once you get through that section, the campaign starts to open up pretty wide. I mean, you can still see we got a little bit of cleanup left here to do, but we're already in progress of taking back all that territory. It is kind of hard to make specific recommendations because it is dependent on the course of the rest of the campaign. Personally, I like to help the dwarves if I can. I don't know, I like the dwarves, I like playing as them, and it makes sense to try to help them as the Empire. Really depends on how well or how poorly they're doing against the greenskins and how much of a threat they are to you. Of course, there's also Bretonia. Bretonia can be friends or food, or, whatever the heck is happening over here, if they're even alive, right? Beyond that, it's just wrapping up, kind of getting your fealty built up, getting the rest of the Empire factions under your control, and preparing yourself for the final wave of chaos. You might also want to take the time to clean up Norska, but that's really up to you. Sucks to take that territory, but it's also nice to clean them up and not having to worry about the raids. that really covers everything for the big picture here. Like I said, I kind of wanted to take a quicker step through all the paces of this campaign just to get an idea of what we'll be talking about and why it will matter as we move through the details. So let's kind of step back a little bit and talk more about the details now. Alright, so having taken a look at the big picture, what the course of the campaign looks like as it develops over time, I kind of want to go back, like I said, and focus on some more of the details. So I'm going to go back and start like I usually do with some building and military tips, talking about any potential unique or especially useful buildings you might want, as well as any military compositions that might be particularly useful and work in tandem with those buildings, might have bonuses for the faction, or are going to be good against the person you're going up against. Now, for the Golden Order, there's really nothing too special on the buildings front. The biggest issue is that you have such a limited number of build slots in your starting settlement. You do, of course, have this unique building, the Faldorf Wine Market, which is just going to replace your income building. But you can see here, I was able to get a warrior priest hero. You might want one of these growth buildings to be demolished and keep it, open as a slot for building some hero buildings, swapping those out. But generally speaking, you kind of want to keep things simple because you don't have that many build slots. So you're just going to want to stick to a pretty standard composition. Of course, Gelt gets that bonus for artillery. I think it's 10% missile damage. Yeah. So you want to try to get to a foundry as soon as you can. One thing to note is that since Nuln is nearby, you do have, their landmark building allows you to actually recruit Hellstorm rocket batteries and great cannons at tier 3 instead of at tier 4. But you can also see it in this campaign, and maybe I should have a growth building here, but we're going to get Faldorf to tier 4 right around the same time we get Nuln to tier 3. So it's not really going to pay off in that big of a way for us, but just something to keep in mind, right? It is still a very useful building. Towards the late game, you probably want to consider moving your unit production more to Nuln, because if you can take this, well, even so, upkeep and recruit rank for all characters, it still would be nice to be able to run some of this stuff from here. But that's really the only thing that I would say you have to consider for building considerations. But yeah, otherwise either like Wissenland or even Carrick-Herne might be better off as, your primary province, more or less, just because of the limited number of slots you have here to start with. Now, our military composition isn't going to be too unique either. Like I said, the Nuln landmark can be useful for early rocket batteries, but you probably aren't even going to get there. And this isn't a perfect composition either. It's probably too balanced. At this stage, you're going to want to drop more of the crossbowmen and maybe one more. I think this is enough mortars, but having a few more handgunners and starting to try to get some heroes in here too as you can. But generally speaking, you want artillery for Gelt because of his bonus to it, but it's pretty standard for any Old World Empire campaign because you'll be fighting vampires eventually. Aside from that, there's not really anything particularly important to discuss for Gelt here when it comes to building and military. I think we've covered the few things that we need to touch on, and there's not really much else to say. Despite the separate start and slightly different targets, your overall strategy is going to be fairly consistent with that of a Reikland campaign anyway. So, with the building and military tips out of the way, let's talk about some of the short-term goals that you need to have in order to have a successful campaign here as the Golden Order. The first one, obviously, take out the greenskins, right? Not only do they control your province, but they control most of the adjacent province as well. Obvious tip, but still important, right? They have the underway and you don't. So if you can, sometimes it's better to leave your army out as bait and kind of intentionally take a fight that they would win in auto-resolve, but that you can probably play out and win, especially with some good magic usage by Gelt. Because if you can smash their armies, it gives you time to move around, right? They have this settlement over here, and trying to stretch from Faldorf to Steingart to take this and circle back is probably what you want to do. But it just depends on where they locate their armies, and the problem is it's hard to defend your capital when you have these two extended zones to take on. But yeah, so basically you want to isolate them in a place where you can reach them, and they can't effectively run away or avoid your army. I mentioned this in the overview too, but Wissenland will attack you. Just being aware of them should be enough to succeed. Their fealty is low. It's not likely to raise in the early game. You just want to make sure that you're ready for it, right? That you don't leave yourself totally undefended or unprepared and kind of leave yourself some contingency for it, or take out the greenskins quick and then just assume that Wissenland is next. You may not want to wipe them out because of the authority penalty. However, if you do get a couple of good events early on, you can and probably should just knock them out. So, you've taken out the Greenskins, you've subjugated Wissenland. You could see, honestly, I have enough Imperial authority here that I probably could have just wiped them out, but I made peace with them so I could focus on some other things. One of those things is to try and make friends with Clan Angrand, right? I don't think you want this territory because it's going to put you too close to too many people who are going to want to fight you. It's good to be friends with them instead, and they're probably going to be a mainstay for a long time. You also want to focus on becoming friends with some Empire factions. Stirland appears to be dead, but Stirland and Talabheim in Talabheim. Those are some good secondary targets. I think Averheim and Clan Angrand are some good primary targets for friendship. And then, of course, like once you get in contact with them and have a reliable means of it, start becoming friends with and building fealty with Reikland, as they're probably the most important faction for you to confederate in this campaign. You also have a bunch of little things, right? If the dwarves are still here, probably kill them. Mountain terrain is good for you, so you want it. The dwarves here, if you can, you want to kill them, but this is just too far out of your way, and you probably won't have the time. It'll make you too vulnerable, right? You have other things to focus on. I do like to take out Fester Spike though, because of the Skaven corruption that it's going to cause, and the more time you give them, once their buildings get up, they're going to spread it a little bit. It's annoying, right? But yeah, if you have some extra time, you also might want to take out the border princes to the south. Having extra territory to bring in income doesn't hurt, and all you really need to do is build walls here. I wouldn't really commit armies to defending this because it's going to be a boost to you in the early game, but it's not critical for you to defend and hold these to survive into the mid game. So, just to recap a little bit, right? We start out, we take out our couple of immediate threats, or at least put ourselves in a place to be able to defend against it, right? And then you want to take some downtime, right? 20 or 30 turns where honestly all you're going to be doing is focusing on building yourself up and building diplomatic relations with different people, right? Because eventually you're going to have to fight the vampires, or it's going to at least become a problem, or if you're doing a good job of preparing, it's going to be an opportunity, right? You're going to have a chance to attack the vampires and take some of their stuff for yourself. You can also see that things are going great with fealty all across the board. A couple, not quite at 10 here, but we'll easily be able to get that. You do want to focus on a small number of Empire factions at a time to get their fealty to 10 early on and start accumulating Imperial authority instead of just trying to spread it all around. But yeah, basically you're building up so you can reach this point, right? Where now we have control of this territory. Well, even so, the Empire, right? Reikland already did a great job of pushing through the vampires, so us just kind of playing passively and building up worked out. You might have to take a more aggressive posture against them, but the point is, this is your main short-term goal for the start of this campaign, right? Secure your starting territory to a degree to which you can defend it and hold that territory and do that and build up as much as you can from it. I mean, you can see I swept out the border princes pretty well too, but you want to do that and prepare for the vampires, right? That is your number one goal in the early game, is be ready for the vampire issue. Now, of course, it's looking great here. We're going to confederate both of these factions and be able to just sweep the rest of this. So that's what we're going to be looking for, right? It's important to track the strength and growth of the vampires and compare it to Reikland as you go. You have to know when and where to intervene, right? You don't want to do anything too early. It's possible for the Empire to do the work for you. Dreicher and the Dwarves might sufficiently slow them down. Even Clan Mulder might end up going to war with the vampires, or the vampires just might end up pushing far enough north, and then they get pushed back down by Norska. But yeah, realistically, the vampires usually sit and wait until they're strong enough to push out successfully and will blow through these minor factions with ease. Getting yourself to tier 4 and getting Hellstorm rocket batteries is a big help. I think that great cannons are actually pretty nice against the vampires as well. They're going to help you kind of blow away some, these are really good at sniping out some of the cavalry, right? Then you don't have to hit single targets, but you're still doing a lot of damage for the anti-large. Handgunners and perhaps some huntsmen for the versatility would be nice too. But like I said, this is, the turning point for this campaign. You should have a decent strength in military and economy. You should have the Imperial authority to make some confederations. And you want to try to time either your confederations or your attacks to be able to wipe out the vampire counts and really consolidate yourself in the south central area of the Empire. Basically, this is the main thing that you want to do within the first 50 to 100 turns. So that should cover everything I want to talk about for the short-term goals here. Really just try to give you an idea of some of the things to focus on here in the early game and how to get through it, right? Because this campaign, honestly, the Empire campaigns, it's not hard to survive past turn 50, but if you don't deal with the vampires properly at the right moment in time, it'll become a nuisance that will last far too long, right? So we're now going to shift into talking a little bit more about the long-term strategy. So I think that if you can get yourself to a point like this, it should be relatively smooth sailing from here on out. Taking out all this territory and really pushing the vampires back to the brink, you kind of have to overextend yourself to really wipe out a faction sometimes, and I still think that's for the best, because even with one city, and this campaign I did on very hard, the AI is going to be building up a decent amount of troops, right, and be able to come after you pretty badly here, even if you leave them with only one city. But so regardless of that, right, your territory is going to be fairly spread out at this point, but you should have enough armies to cover it. You should have the strength to keep people from attacking you and the economic balance to be able to like pay people off or just continue building relationships across the board. There's a lot of different directions you can go here, but I really do think you want to be a little bit defensive here, right? It's very likely for Clan Molder to start coming in and causing problems for you at this stage, and we'll kind of look at that a little bit more later. I personally think, especially, at this turn, it's turn 71, we still have to kind of wipe out the vampires, and it might be better for you to just wait for Chaos to show up and deal with Molder themselves. I've also noticed when the AI is losing on one front, they tend to try and force their way forward, right? So when Molder starts losing their bigger settlements back here, they're really going to try to force the battle on the frontiers that they're already on. So you want to be able to either have land that you're comfortable giving up with to fall back to a defensive position, or really just be prepared to repel them at your borders, right? You want to set up a frontier for yourself that you say, I have enough armies to cover these 3 spots, plus an army that I can leave back here in case something goes horribly wrong on the flank, or maybe split between 2 here, something like that. But you want to establish a defensive posture, right? You want to be able to repel any of those attacks if something like that does happen. It's exactly what happened to me here, right? But you need to survive both a last chance assault from Clan Molder and a follow-up incursion from Chaos that might be likely. Of course, being defensive doesn't necessarily mean that you don't attack anybody and you don't grow or expand at all. If there's any little things you can find to take out, little like tiny but more certain tasks that you can do, or weaker areas that you can expand into maybe and take out, like grow a little bit. You just want to expand slow but sure, right? Make sure that you're not leaving yourself vulnerable anywhere, because we already have a lot of territory. As you progress through this stage, you're very likely to see the increasing size of the greenskins, and obviously it's not likely that they're going to be your friend. Whether or not you want to try to save the dwarves is up to you, but just keep this in mind that, this fight is, it turned into a nice long stalemate for me, which is very fortunate. Maybe the dwarves update helped them a little bit more than I realized, but expect there to be either a potential friend or a potential foe on this frontier, and just be aware of that, right? Track that. You're also very likely to see Bretonia suffering from any number of factors. They've got the Wood Elves here. On this campaign, the Skull Smashers actually stayed alive for forever. They also suffer frequent attacks from Norska and the Dark Elves, right? Rakarth. So, super annoying. As with any campaign, you want to try and stick to one target at a time and eliminate them as much as you can, right? You want to maybe defend yourself on one flank while you push forward on another. Here, we've still been kind of biding our time, right? I ended up having to push all the way out here to Norden to take out the vampires because they killed the Norska that had that settlement. But like I was talking about with Clan Molder, right? I basically intend to lose these settlements, right? I'm here to try and defend them a little bit with a terrible army. Pretend you didn't see that. But really, this is not a place. I have this place just for the gold, for a little extra income, but that's not my front line, right? That's not the place that I intend to hold the line at, because I'm not certain. I'm not certain that I can defend, this kind of territory effectively, right? So it's really about striking an effective balance between preparing for the chaos invasion and eliminating other threats nearby as you kind of go. But yeah, basically we're still, at this point, it's kind of like we saw in the early game, where we're just waiting for the next opportunity to present itself, right? We're not going to overextend too much. We're not going to take territory and then be mad that we lost it to something that's expected, right? We're waiting. We know that the Chaos Invasion is happening within the next 10 turns, and there's a lot of moves that we'll be able to make once we kind of see the results in the aftermath of that. Really doesn't hurt to get several heroes in position before that point so that you can scout things out and really watch firsthand without putting any of your armies at risk as well. Assuming everything turns out well from this first invasion, you'll be in a great position to basically do whatever you want for the rest of the campaign, right? You know, like you can see I'm still cleaning things up here, but we have total vision over this area, not really seeing any chaos threats. This should be the last city or one of the last two. Oh, they still got 4. Well, whatever. Clan Molder's on its last legs, right? We've successfully repelled their desperation push outwards. We have, like, betrayed Drycha successfully and put her on her last legs. Norska doesn't really seem to be a problem, and so at this point it's about just kind of building up your fealty, trying to repel Norska invasions, or perhaps even pushing through into their territory and wiping them out. You want to keep an eye on the greenskins. Like I said, they're very likely to grow and become a problem. I made a military alliance here with the dwarves just for fun. I wouldn't recommend military alliance. The dwarves are likely to do something stupid, like, oh, I don't know, confederate the dwarves here and then declare war on Khemri, perhaps, for example. But generally speaking, the greenskins still do pretty well here. It's hard to say which way that goes in your campaign. You still got Wood Elves here, and like I said, Bretonia is just an absolute mess in this campaign of mine. But this means that it's yours for the taking, right? I don't have any real reason to be friends with Paravan other than for convenience, and so this is all great territory for me to take. So, you know, at this point you can probably be pushing things forward on a couple frontiers. Securing Bretonia for yourself is nice. Wiping out Rakarth would be really nice just to get him out of the game. Wiping out Ikiclaw would be really nice, and it seems that Tilia is already on their way to doing that. But yeah, otherwise, at this point you're just, you know, you're counter pushing for now, and in another 40 turns or so, we're going to see the second wave of chaos come in. By then, you should have the Imperial authority to safely confederate the rest of these factions without really losing anything or risking your Imperial authority, and that's pretty much the end of the campaign. So, I think that covers everything I wanted to for the long-term strategy, as well as the Golden Order campaign starter guide in general. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you did find something new to use in your campaigns or learned a little bit more about how the flow of the campaign may go. We've seen a lot of updates to this game over the years, honestly, and the position that the Golden Order is in today is very different than on the release date of Mortal Empires, especially with the balancing of the other factions. But yeah, we've seen a lot of progress, we've seen a lot of changes, and hopefully this helped make sense of things to you, give you kind of an overview and cut through the details of it as well. If you do enjoy these videos, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm happy to keep making these videos, and it's nice to know what people like to see, but I always appreciate the feedback, and obviously it makes me feel good to think people enjoy this stuff. If you do think I missed anything, please let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to get some other ideas on how to improve my own strategies or how to make this campaign go better for anyone else out there. If there's always things that I can learn. With that being said, thanks for watching, have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.